All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here today with Mr. Moses Timali. Most people around these parts of the area around the country know him as Coach Mo. A lot of different job titles for Mr. or Coach Mo, I should say. It's so weird to say Coach or sorry, Mr. Mo. So I'm going to stick with Coach Mo because that's what I've called you time and time again. Somebody called you Mr. Mo a couple of months ago, and I was like, "Are we talking about the same person here?" But I know Coach Mo from coaching with him with the Bismarck Youth Football League. I've been fortunate enough to coach alongside with him, learned so much from him. He also coaches BHS freshman football, so he's kind of stepped away a little bit of time from BYFL to be with the BHS football program. He is also a prominent figure in the Bismarck High Demon Wrestling program. We're going to talk all things coaching, maybe a lot of his journey along the way. He's definitely got a unique journey leading up to his basically coming home, as you may say, to Bismarck. For any of those who are my age or within maybe 10 to 15 years of my Bismarck High 2012 graduating year, Coach Mo is also the new modern day Cy Timmons. So those of you who know Cy Timmons from the glory days of Bismarck High, that is basically the job title that Mo holds in full-time position at Bismarck High alongside all of his coaching titles. So, Mo, you're kind of towards the tail end of wrestling season. How's the winter treated you with some crazy wrestling tournaments? I mean, I know high school has been done for what, a month now, but you guys at Matt Pack and all the youth wrestlers the past month or so have still had tournaments along the way. How's wrestling season treating you?
Well, the end here is kind of uh, slowed down. Not much, but we slowed down. Um, got quite a few kids that do a lot of off-season stuff, and then there's still some high school tournaments that we're just had one of our former BYFL athletes, Ben DeForest. He's in Virginia Beach right now, so yeah, it's kids are either playing other sports. Some are in track. Some I also run our lifting program in the mornings at Bismarck High, so I got a bunch of kids in there. So
Good.
that's a 12-week program. So
It's
yeah,
kind of the day and age that you have to live in now is working out. If this isn't even a come by and stop by if you feel like it, come by every now and then if you feel this is like we get to it when we need to get to it or else we fall behind the rest of the world. That's the world we live in now, which is a good thing, but I think I know you can attest to hopefully young people are starting to catch on to that and starting to if I want to play, if I want to be effective in what I do, I need to be doing this consistently and getting after it and not just doing this when I feel like it.
yes, sir. That's the name of the game now. And like you said, it's it's a good thing. You know, it just makes it that much more competitive, which we all love that. We love the competitiveness.
Absolutely. So before we get into anything coaching, I want to jump into your journey because I don't even know how many people in the Bismarck area, let alone like people who coach with you or work with you on a daily basis. And I know a few things about your journey that we've discussed from time to time, but I want to talk about what led you to Bismarck, where you've been, the experiences you've had that have helped shape you as a person, as a player in the past, as a coach. Where are you originally from?
I am originally from Washington in the Tacoma area. That's where I was born. Um, my mother, she had three children, including me, and then she also raised three other children from my father's previous marriage. So she raised six kids until we moved here. We moved here when I was in second grade. So back in '94 is when we moved back. When we moved to Bismarck. Um, we first moved to California. We were in a short stint there. Then from California, we moved straight here. Pretty crazy. I mean, people are like, "How'd you end up in Bismarck, North Dakota?" Well, that was my mother. She did her homework on the area, and she loved the area, and she found a job here, and then we moved here. That's how we got here.
And mom's still back in Hawaii, correct?
Yes, she retired and she moved back to Hawaii.
So back to your playing career, and I'm pretty certain that there are a few different stops along the way. I know you've worn a few different college gears to practice that you've been tied to or connected to at some point, but where did you play college ball? I know you've had a few stops at bigger schools, smaller schools. What was your journey with that like?
Yeah. So went to University of Mary out of high school. Wasn't my first choice, but some extenuating circumstances happened, and then I was blessed to still receive a scholarship, and just so happened to be in Bismarck. And I came my freshman year, and then I transferred the following year out. Um, at the time, Myron Schultz was the head coach there at Bismarck High. I mean, at University of Mary. So, leaving University of Mary, it was tough, but Coach Schultz made it, a good transition. He made it easy for me to be able to transfer out. I transferred down to University of Utah, which is in Salt Lake. My mom had left Bismarck. Her and my little sister, my brother was already gone, had moved out. Um, she had already moved down to Utah because I have a older sister down there, and we had a bunch of other family that lived down there. So wanted to be close to where they were at, to where she was at. So sent a film, highlight film. I got a preferred walk on to University of Utah, which was in 07, 08. Attended spring ball. I made the team, and then I ended up transferring out the following year to a D1 AA school, which is Weber State, which is also in Utah.
Yep.
That's in Ogden, north of Salt Lake. I finished my years there. I graduated from there playing football, and shortly after that, I moved back to Bismarck.
So in the days of the transfer portal now, I guess Mary to Utah to Weber State wouldn't be too far off the grid, but in the days of 2007, 2008, University of Mary to Utah to Weber State, that's quite the transition. So what kind of, I know you kind of mentioned family parts of it, but what kind of urged you to go to these different schools in that order and pattern? Because going from Mary to Utah and Weber State is quite the pattern there.
Yeah, when people hear that, or even to the new schools that I had gotten to, they're kind of dumbfounded, like, why here, and like how did that happen? That's hats off to my mother. She, if I had an agent, she'd be considered my agent. She kind of did a lot of the legwork, which a lot of the paperwork, to get me, into these places, or even to get recruited, to even get a preferred walk on.
Yeah.
At that time, you could get a film, but it's not as easy as it is today, where they have platforms like Huddle.
Yep.
You can literally go in there and make your own highlight.
Yep.
Back then, you have
put it on your Twitter page.
Yeah, put on your Twitter page. You couldn't do that back then. You had to request film from the team, and then they only gave you so much, so you had to get help to edit it where it was just your plays, and then be able to send it. And you couldn't always email it, so you had to send it by mail. You had to send
Crazy.
it by mail.
Now they're doing this at the touch of a button on a cell phone. It's crazy.
Crazy.
So you make stops at tiny school, University of Mary. You go to D1. I'm sure that were they still in the Pac-12 back then with Utah?
No, they were Mountain West back then.
Mountain West.
Yeah.
Hey, so you go to a big school in Mountain West, which is now Pac-12, which is also now disintegrated, and then back up to Weber State. So with these stops at both small schools and big schools, what were some of your own personal takeaways from these experiences, and how have you taken those experiences? Obviously, this is what, 15, 20 years ago now. But what kind of takeaways did you have from that have helped you just in your life today?
No, that's a really good question. This should all tie in with moving schools. This all also, you know, um, being being that we moved quite a bit. My my mom just she I don't know, she just liked to move quite a bit, and
Mhm.
we learned at a young age that you had to learn to adapt. And that's one of the big learning things that I use today when it comes to coaching. So when I was at Mary was cool as the aspect of it was like a small community. It was really small, easy to get across campus. You know, those are probably the two major things. And then when I got to University of Utah, which is, oh gosh, in size to University of Mary, it's quite large.
Mm.
You know, and then the student body, the campus was a shock for me at first. Uh, Big culture shock. You go from going to a bigger metropolitan area compared to a little small Bismarck, Mandan. It's a lot for a kid. And not only that was the program itself. You go from being able to compete pretty easily against the guys at a smaller school, and then you get a big school and everybody's huge, everybody's fast,
Yep.
and and everybody's good. You know, so that was a big change for me. I think it was just the whole fact of how big it was. You go on the stand, you go on a field where there's almost 30,000 fans.
Yep.
You know, and coming from a smaller school where at the time we're getting don't get huge crowds. Um, and those are probably the main things. Was just the culture shock from being a smaller school to a bigger area, and then going to the next school, which it wasn't as big, but it was still big enough for me. And those are the things that I take away from that.
Gotcha. I like it. So you of course, have Hawaiian and some Samoan roots and culture. So you've been able to head back to Hawaii a few times to visit family. I know I've seen pictures. You shared pictures with me going back to see mom and back in Hawaii. What kind of impact or influence have your Samoan and Hawaiian roots had on this crazy life journey that you've been on?
You know, uh, Being Samoan and Polynesian is just uh, deeply rooted in family. So family, and then after that comes God and religion. So those are the two main aspects of our culture. But taking that, you can relate that to anything in life, which just so happens to be the best part is football or wrestling or any sport. Just taking it into a team sport. Um, Family is a big thing, and anybody that knows that's been on a team or competed on a team, they know that you know the culture on your team and being able to be a family is important. And that's one of the major things out of the many things I could name. That's probably the most important thing I take away from my culture.
Gotcha. So in a lifetime full of different destinations that you've had, when did you land back in Bismarck and what brought you back to Bismarck?
uh, I had an opportunity in 2013. I you know my fiance, wife by by common law. um I kind of followed her back up here. She's from here. um in 2013 came back up here. Been here ever since. We got two beautiful boys, by the way, Yeah.
It's always the females that bring you back, isn't it?
It's usually how it works.
We'll get to some title of dad here in a little while, because you and I are both on the same page with some ages of kiddos running around the house. I think they're kind of the same stature too. They should have a wrestling match one of these days.
Hey, I'm down. We'll have to take that.
So you get into coaching, which is clearly a strength of yours, as I can very well say that to anybody, as I've coached with you, and I know you're part of some very, very good coaching staffs at Bismarck High. While you coach two sports at the high school level, you also coach with us 5th and 6th grade youth football in Bismarck. What things at the youth level have translated for you as a coach at the high school level?
You know, coaching little kids was, my first get into coaching here in Bismarck. Was your mom who's the one put the the birdie in your dad's ear, and your dad asked me. I'd say patience. Kids at that age, and it's crazy when you came to start coaching with us, knowing that you're an elementary teacher. I see your patience with the kids and how you talk to them, and I said that's something I learned from, because I was like, that's awesome, and that's one of the best things, like I learned from your dad and the other coaches, is how patient they are, with 5th and 6th graders.
Yep.
I take that with me coaching high school kids, and then other kids that I work with outside of high school. Like, it's patience, and I think that's an awesome trait to have and to learn.
Absolutely. I absolutely echo that one. So since we're both football people, I'll start with your football coaching style up at Bismarck High. Again, you coach both football and wrestling at BHS. Again, two very, very solid staffs full of very, very great people. What have you learned from Coach Gibson, maybe specifically, as well as just the overall staff at BHS? I know it's changed. I've been out of high school now for over 10 years, which is crazy to think about, but I know there's a few people still there that when I was there, but you also have some youngins that have graduated, went to college, and came back to be in the program. What are some things that you've learned from Coach Gibson? Obviously, he's a legend in North Dakota and probably the Midwest, really, because of how successful that program has continued to be. Obviously, there's been a few downsides and a few down years here and there that every program is going to experience. But I know I've watched state title games where there's Bismarck High teams in it that probably shouldn't have been in it because of just how good the coaches are. And I remember watching Bismarck High a couple of years ago in a state title game, and I'm like, this is not a state championship team. They're just really well coached. There's not that much skill. There's not much. Obviously, there's years where BHS is absolutely loaded. My senior year and Jaron's senior year and the year after mine with the Ben Jolfs and the Lane Joes of the world. But from a coach's perspective, coaching next to Mark Gibson and his staff, what are some kind of pieces that you've continued to keep with you and learn from being part of that successful program?
Great question. Seeing Coach Gibson, not a lot of people get to say that he was their coach. He was their coach, and then he got to coach alongside with them or coach for him. And that's a blessing, because that's something I've always looked up to. He's also a man and a coach that I've also always looked up to. Just seeing how he goes about his preparation for, like, starting on Monday, like his preparation throughout the week, and how he progresses, and just how he carries himself and leading up to the game. It's you go from be a freshman, sophomore kid, getting to being in a locker room before games and seeing his pregame speech. It
doesn't get much
crazy.
better than a Coach Gibson pregame speech.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that feeling when I first got to hear it again when I started coaching for him, Same feeling as a coach, and the same feeling as as a player for him. And it's it's beautiful to see. It's awesome to see because something I've taken from him uh, recently. We went to a coaching clinic out in Dickinson just recently, and was able to just pick his brain, um, and on a personal level, and obviously on a coaching level, just just listening to him say, uh, "This is a quote, Coach Gibson quote. I'm gonna put it out there." He said, "I think if I wasn't having fun, and if I wasn't feeling like the kids were keeping me young, or I felt like I was staying young because of the kids," he said, "then it would have been time for me to hang them up."
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "I love it," and he said keeps me. He said, "Kids keep me young." He's like, "You guys keep me young," and I think that's why he keeps doing it, because he has fun with it. And he obviously loves the kids and loves the program.
Absolutely. There's so many things I was able to take away. I mean, I love football. I was not very big. I was way more of a baseball guy. And anybody who knows me, especially from the high school years, can echo that. But even just being at practice, being on the scout teams, and just being around the program, you take so much away, not just as a player, but as a person that helps you in so many ways, no matter where your path heads to after you graduate high school. So big shout out to a legend in Coach Mark Gibson. Now, quite possibly an even bigger impact, because I know you are very engulfed in the BHS wrestling program. I know you just kind of started a few years ago with being involved with the BHS freshman football team, so you get them right at their early stages in that program. But shifting over to the BHS wrestling program, and a coach that I wouldn't say is higher up on the totem pole than Coach Gibson, but definitely another absolute legend. I mean, he's won like national coach of the year awards even. So Coach Schumacher, who I never played for. I was never in high school wrestling. I know my brother did, and my brother embraced the living heck out of the years that he was able to wrestle next to the Peyton Kringleys and the Blease brothers, and the Tristan Halls of the world. And everything that life can teach you through the sport of wrestling. But what, again, basically the same question with the Coach Gibson connection, but with Coach Schumacher, and all the other good coaches. There's so many good coaches a part of the BHS wrestling program. So basically, same question. What are some things that Shuey has taught you along the way? I know wrestling teaches you stuff, but also teaches you a lot of life lessons, just like any sport does.
Man, Coach Schumacher. It's I could probably sit here and we could do a whole nother podcast just on Coach Schumacher. Um, Coach Schumacher, if you, if you don't know, he retired this year from coaching Bismarck High.
Yep.
But he's got a new endeavor, a new challenge ahead of him, being the head coach for BSC Wrestling, which
Yep.
is going to be new next year. So, and he also does Map Pack. He still coaches Map Pack, which is our youth club team.
Yep.
Here in Bismarck. So he's a staple there too. So we lose him, but we don't lose him. You know, that's a tough one because he's one of those guys you'll never replace.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the last 7-8 years that I've coached for him, there's there's a ton. There's so much I've learned from that guy. He a famous carpenter saying, they always say that good carpenters, they'll tell you that he's probably forgot more than you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Shuey's one of those guys that when it comes to wrestling, he's probably for me he's forgot more than I know. Um, the way Shuey not only loves wrestling, but he loves what it teaches. It teaches you a lot about yourself. Physically, it'll test you physically. And he says, tests your mind and how strong or weak it is. You find out a lot about yourself. Um, Shuey, the amount of time he's put into kids in this area and in this state is astounding. I could go every tournament throughout the year and meet old guys or other wrestlers that will tell me a story about Shuey.
Yeah.
Tell me a great story about Shuey. Um, Before we move on to the next question, I'll say something that one of the number one things I've learned from Shuey was Shuey I was helping another kid from a different high school at a tournament. On a move, the kid had the kid had a question on a move, and asked Shuey if he could help him. You'd think, it would be kind of egotistical and be like, oh, you should ask your coach because we're not your coach, Not Shuey, man. Shuey was on side of the mat, down on the mat, on his knees, working with the kid, showing him what he should do, After that, I picked his brain later on, and I asked him. I said, why do you help other kids from other high schools when they ask you to help? When they have their coaches and we have our coaches. And he said, because it's about wrestling.
Absolutely.
He said, he asked me about wrestling. I said, I'm going to help him. I said, I'll help. He said, I'll help anybody that'll ask me for help. And, that's one of the number one things I've taken away, from him. If it's about helping a kid at what they're doing at their craft, and if they're going to listen to what I have to say and take my help, why shouldn't I help them? That's just a life lesson that you take and you learn. You can use in life. And I always use that. I always use that when it comes to coaching. If a kid asks for my help, I'll help them.
I've never personally directly been connected with the wrestling program. Obviously, Jaron wrestled his last 2 years of high school. That hopefully translated a little bit as a football player. So I was like part of the program, but didn't actually wrestle in the program. And I could still tell you Shuey stories myself in a matter of just 3 years of kind of being connected to it. But I just went to a wrestling tournament a couple weekends ago because my family from Napoleon was down with their boys wrestling. I take Cohen to the Civic Center to go watch the Grunfelders wrestle, and I just remember like Shuey barely even knows me. He knows me because I'm Jaron's brother and Rhonda's son. He probably doesn't even know my first name, to be honest with you. But he comes up and he puts his arm around me. I asked me how I'm doing, and I said, and this was like 2 weeks after you guys had won another state title. But I said, hey, congrats on adding some trophies to the trophy case. And he kind of looked at me like he wasn't upset, but he looked at me like we're not going to talk about that. But it just shows you how humble he is, how he just does his job. The accolades just add up. And I look over at my mom and I kind of chuckled about it. And she said, it's just another trophy in the trophy case. That's what it is. And it's not bragging. It's not ego. It's just add another one to the wall. So it definitely reminded me of how he is as a person. And it connects to the story you just told with how he's just there. He doesn't care what trophies are in his trophy case. He's there to do his job, and he's really good at it. I know when I worked for McQuaid's a couple of years ago with a few Century kids, shout out to Ian Eli, Shannon's son, of course. We're working at one of the liquor stores, bringing some cases in, and Shuey walks in to grab some stuff, and we talked to him. I mean, these are Century kids that I've obviously never played for him, obviously knew who he was. But I really didn't even say anything about him. And when Shuey walked out of the store, they both looked at me and they said, you do know that's the best coach in the Midwest right there. And I was like, I'm a Bismarck High grad. I know who he is. But for two Century kids to be fully aware of the greatness of Coach Schumacher and the BHS wrestling program was pretty eye-opening at that moment. So any other great, I know you could tell Shuey's story. I mean, you've traveled with Shuey to duels all over the state. I can about imagine the things you could talk about with Coach Schumacher.
For sure. I can tell you a lot of funny stuff too. I'll talk about his preparation and how he goes about his week when it comes to practice and talking to the kids. You know, he he'll take the time out to, even if it was not about wrestling, he if he had something going on and you needed help, that guy, he wouldn't even second guess you. You know, he he'd give his shirt off his back if he had to. I've seen him countless times help kids when it that had nothing to do with wrestling. Just more so about you yourself, how you do mentally, or whatever else is going on, may be going on at home, or outside of wrestling. He never, you could never question him about if he cared or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's just who he is. Like you said, it says a lot about him and his character. That yeah, he's great. He's a great coach, great wrestling coach. But he's an even better person.
Oh yeah,
better human being.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to share my favorite Shuey story of all time. It kind of just crawled up into my brain. I actually shared this. My parents had kind of a wrestling pastime, has-beens wrestling BHS get together at their house over Christmas break. And again, I was not in the program, so I couldn't tell you Shuey stories all day, but I definitely have a few. I remember when Jaron graduates high school, and a good buddy of mine comes over to the graduation party, and this buddy of mine had Shuey as a teacher. He didn't wrestle, but he had him as a teacher, so he knew him pretty well. And so he's looking around all these pictures, whatnot. And again, Shuey hardly even knows. He probably doesn't even know my first name, to be honest with you. But Shuey walks over and he's talking to him, and all of a sudden he looks at my buddy. He goes, "Wait, how do you know Jaron?" And he's like, "Well, I'm really good friends with his brother." And Shuey looks at him and goes, "Jaron has a brother?" And I told this to a bunch of parents, and like, that sounds like a Shuey story. Yeah, sounds like something you do. I was like, I mean, I was only at state wrestling 1 year and maybe a duel or two, so it's not like you see me around. But wait, hold on a second. Jaron has a brother? Like, yeah, he sure does. And my buddy tells me this, like I'm gonna get offended. I'm like, no, that's hilarious. But it's my all-time personal favorite Shuey story. So
hey, that's it. I got comfortable saying this all the time when he had his Shueyism times, like we call it Shueyisms, like things that he does. Like
yeah,
it's just classic Shuey.
yep. Well, I just know so Shuey's daughter was their stats person when Jaron was there, and one of Jaron's favorites is his daughter came to school and was like, "I was gonna watch TV last night and our TV is gone. I don't know what's going on." Well, Shuey had taken it to the wrestling room and he was watching like Russian wrestling videos with some of the guys in the wrestling. Just took it out of the house, took it to the school. But it goes back to he'll help you with anything. Whatever it takes, whether it's watching Russian war videos or what's going on, he's there to help you. So moving on to the last couple of pieces here. I know in the intro I mentioned that your full-time job is basically what Cy Timmons was to us. And I say that because people my age or people listening, I'm sure 99% of people in the Midwest or Bismarck know who Cy Timmons is and what his job title and role at Bismarck High was for years. Obviously, I've learned so much about kids like myself just by being a teacher. That's translated to my coaching philosophy and coaching style. What has your role at BHS? Because obviously you're not necessarily a classroom teacher, but the things you do during the day and what your job description is, what has that taught you about kids, and has that translated at all to your coaching mentality?
Yeah, shout out to Cy Timmons, because he was there when I was there also, and great guy. Like you said, if you're in Bismarck, you know who Cy Timmons is.
Oh yeah.
Well, Cy was there for years, obviously, over 25 years he was there. And his positions kind of changed a little bit. There's not taken away from Cy at all. It's just there's a little bit more to that position now, which is great, and I love it. I I I love it. I get to see the kids all day, and I see more kids than probably I'd say most teachers do in the building. You know, the cool thing about not just dealing with behavioral students, I get to see all the other kids also too. So just talking with them. Sometimes it's not even about football or wrestling. It could be one of our girls students where they talk about basketball or their sport. You know, I just being able to be a totally different person and just talking to kids all day. You know, I love it. You know, just and then a lot of kids I get close with, whether they be my athletes or just students at the school. You know, just being able to help them with their day-to-day stress. You know, when they talk about as life skills, you know, that's probably one of the main things I do is is talk kids, out of a corner, not feeling like they're in a corner. Just being that an adult that they can, talk to. I use that other than helping with my coaching. I use that to help kids in the weight room, or, like like Chewy says, I use that help them. It has nothing to do with wrestling,
Yep.
And that's probably one of the main aspects from that job that I take is, learning how to build relationships with students. If I got to help them with homework, which, is on a rare case, you know, doing stuff like that and being able to help them there, you know, using that with youth kids, I take that with the youth kids also, because it takes me totally out of my zone with kids that I don't see all day long, every day, to kids that I only see twice a week, 3 times a week, and being able to build relationships with those guys. That position teaches me a lot about building quick relationships, and then also learning how to adapt when the kids leave, in 4 years or 3 years here, or whenever that time may be when they leave Bismarck High. Just being able to build quick relationships, and so they last, for as long as can be.
Yep. So kind of my last point on coaching, and I'll kind of start this question off by when I started coaching the BYFL, obviously going through sports your whole life, likely through high school, maybe even those fortunate enough to play at the college level, and then coming back and getting into youth sports. And obviously I've been part of the BYFL for I think almost now 10 years, which is kind of cool. But I remember when I started, I think I've said this on previous episodes before, that when I started coaching youth football, my dad, who obviously has been in the program for 35 plus years now, and I remember, I'll never forget, he told me my first day that I started coaching that, and this just regards youth football, I guess, in general, youth sports. He said, just remember that in 10 years, nobody's going to ask you how many youth football titles you have, and nobody is going to care. And I say that because of you and I are both so centered with youth sports, and kind of I'll lead into the question for you, is the developmental aspect and the fun aspect. And I have highlighted on my note sheet here that one big thing I've learned from you, and obviously carry it with me when I teach elementary schools on a daily basis, is making sure kids are having fun. And after every single game we play, before we talk about the game, before we talk as coaches, that's the first question I ask our guys. I say, Coach Mo has a question for you. And what's your first question?
Did you have fun?
And they all go nuts. And so I think every week it's kind of a reminder to me that we're here to have fun. I know in this day and age, we're here to have fun. Maybe gives a negative look to some people who are hardcore about sports, hardcore about getting their kids to the next level and this and that. But I guess leading into my question, you've obviously coached fifth and sixth grade football, you've coached freshmen, and you've overlooked the Bismarck High program. You've been a part of the BHS wrestling dynasty. How have you continued to center your coaching style and coaching mindset around being developmental with all these kids who, I know, social media and recruiting, and I know you talked about Huddle, how easy it is to get recruiting stuff out to coaches. Um, has it been difficult as a high school coach to continue to be focused around developmentals, or is that kind of something some kids try to shy away from because they want to go quick, they want to be great now, or is just the developmental piece, has that always continued to be able to something you've been able to do at every level?
That's another great question. Um, you know, like you said, with social media being such at the forefront of our society today, it's at a touch of a finger where kids can like look at, just scroll and see something flashy, like like one of their football idols on the field doing flashy. Like you said, they just want it now. Some kids want to get there today. You know, um, I want to say like dealing with the demographics, of today, and just society alone is obviously not the same as it was 20 years ago. You don't sometimes you don't get the same type of kids, as you did back then, or or maybe even 10 years ago, or maybe when you were in high school, um, just finagling that aspect, you know. Um, but I've always been a believer in development, since I went to school in college and been around good coaches and just seeing how they, approach the way they coach. I brought it back with me, and I've always said, I never had that when I was at a young age, was to give all the knowledge I possibly can to these kids at a young age, and hopefully progress them along the way through their high school, up through high school. If starting at the basics, um, working through the basic fundamentals of our sports, or whatever sport that they may be working towards. Sometimes we get away from, especially today, kids don't want to put the work in. Like working at your craft has to be at the forefront, to develop kids as they go through here. And that's one of the cool things about BYFL. Not a lot of places have a youth program like that.
Mm-hmm.
And a successful one at that. We got metropolitan areas like, or in North Dakota per se, Fargo. Where they want to know how we're doing it. Or these other cities that don't have programs are trying to figure out how we run our program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the development. Developing these kids and get them to play longer, not to give up on that sport. You know, um, and you got to have fun doing it. And that's something I try to do. Oh, being a big kid, like I'm, we got two sons, but I'm like the third son. Because I'm just a big kid, man. And
Me too.
and it's sometimes we lose sight of that. You're with young kids every day for school, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think being a kid is okay in the right situations. I think kids relate to that. If if you're able to distinguish between the two of being serious and being a kid, man, I feel like the kids relate to you way more,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to play for guys like that, and those are, like you said, two big aspects of sports that it's a must for me. And like it's like Coach Gibson said, that if it's not fun for me, and I'm not having fun with the kids, then I shouldn't be coaching anymore. That's the day I'll probably hang him up.
Yep. Heard that. Well, that's really all I have for coaching. My last point is we got to break out the smokers at some point this summer. For those who don't know, Mo is very likely not a hidden talent, but I don't want to let his secret out so much that he never finds time in his schedule to cook for me ever again. I mean, I got to talk today to the best cook in the Midwest. I mean, this Coach Mo is grilled chicken, unbelievable. I mean, I could eat that for weeks on end. So we definitely gotta. I know we've tried to plan in the past a BYFL Saints coaches cookout. So we gotta find some time before football season, because we all know we all get busy the moment football season ends, even though we think life's gonna slow down and then it never does. And so sometime this summer we gotta get together and fire up the smoker and the grill. And I basically say that because I want 3 weeks of Mo's leftovers at my house afterwards. But
so leftovers, man, the best.
Anytime Mo texts me that he's in the neighborhood cooking for somebody, I just tell my wife I'll be back in a little bit. Give me a couple hours. You'll see me in a little while. And she usually answers, just make sure you bring home some leftovers. Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate you stopping by, talking some coaching. Hopefully we can see a little more of your face in the fall. I know you got father of 2, you got coaching left and right, and volunteer youth football coach isn't exactly the easiest job and time commitment. So I totally hear the people who are unable to fit into their schedule in the fall, because it can be a lot, but it's as much fun as it is. The schedule gets crazy in the fall. I wouldn't want it any other way, but appreciate you jumping on and appreciate learning from you every single year as we get to coach together. So anything else from you?
Oh, sir, I appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, always got to have fun.
Absolutely. You got it. All right. Thanks to our listeners for stopping by again for another episode of Enthusiasm is Our Jam podcast. See you later.